Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. Okay, so eradicate siloed data through APIs. Even with the power of APIs and their growing popularity in AEC, many of us are still not extracting as much value as we want. So as a result, this creates data silos, and we kind of want to just eradicate this. So in here, we'll discover how we can democratize the use of APIs and unleash greater data flows for an improved BIM collaboration. Just about me, I'm an implementation manager at 3D Repo. I work at the product team. I'm going to do a quick, brief presentation about 3D Repo for those of you that don't know who we are. I'm an architectural designer by background, so it's very important to mention that it's not an API developer that is doing this presentation on purpose. So the agenda for today, I'm going to talk about 3D Repo very briefly, then we'll get to the APIs, and then I'll illustrate the industry challenges and the current customer process, and then where do we go from here, what are the opportunities, and then our goals and focus at 3D Repo and how we bring a solution to the problems that we face currently in the industry. I'll do this by focusing specifically on one use case, and then you'll just discover what that is. So a quick introduction to 3D Repo and why it started in the first place. It's a cloud-based tool for managing BIM data. The platform is designed to help users collaborate easily on BIM projects and manage not just the 3D geometry, but also the underlying data. So our core beliefs are, we believe that BIM software is too complex. BIM creates knowledge silos. As a result, interoperability is hard, and data needs to be accessible with no proprietary data lock-in. And obviously, we're dealing with the construction industry, so every project is different. What happens basically is that we break down files into a database format, which allows us to split the storage of model elements and metadata so they can be queried either together or independently. So once that data is in the cloud, you can access the game engine and optimize assets via Unity or Unreal. But you can also just use the platform's front end and the back end with the APIs to push and pull data from any other platform that utilizes basically the APIs. So pulling all the metadata is in this example what I'm going to focus on mostly for the context of this presentation. That's right, I said API. So tech trends come and go, but your APIs will be around for a very long time. So this gives visibility to specific activities, such as those that happen on site, away from the design offices. And here are some of the benefits. So obviously, it's a low cost, easy to implement. It allows for greater functionality, enhances productivity and performance, truly integrated workflows, enhanced and simple customer experience, and visibility to specific activities. Then the digital resources value as opportunity for revenue growth. So for example, if I have a 3D model and some 4D planning spreadsheet on top of 2D drawings and other sources of data, I can fully add that onto the model. So just before I dive a little bit deeper, let's talk about the myth versus the facts and what are they exactly. So APIs are not a database. They're actually an access point to an app or a file that can access a database. They're not a code. They're linked to products, CDEs, authoring tools, sheets, anything really. They're not a software, but softwares can be built on APIs, so that allows for a component to interface with other software. They're not a URL. They're an endpoint. So that could include a URL or a server that is the other end of the communication channel. So it's important now to just talk about the industry challenges and why we're here talking about APIs as well. And some of the general industry challenges we see which remain unaddressed today. AEC still suffers from poor data management. BIM software are not designed to ingest the complexity of all information in a contemporary AEC project. And AEC professionals aren't necessarily equipped to develop sophisticated applications, right? So they're not developers, and neither we expect them to be. So their need is very simple. They want to be able to bring their own data and other data and then do clever things with that data for better project delivery. So where we are now here and what this means in terms of the practice, and here are just some points to consider. First of all, it's significantly a document-driven industry. Yes, 2022, we're still talking about this. For example, one of our customers still uses PDFs to communicate method statement. Basically, they're just instructions about what people should do on site. And they're not very friendly to each other. You know, they result in lots of manual configurations such as import, export workflows. Maybe they work for them, they might not work in the entire supply chain. And we still aren't sharing the 3D model with enough people. So maybe just a tiny portion. You know, it takes really such a long time. People work hard to create those BIM models in the first place. And we're not really sharing that enough with, you know, the other people in the industry. So it's a consuming model production that results in basically nothing. We just end up archiving most of the models. So another problem is that all of this creates data silos as a main friction point. You know, so for example, as a facade subcontractor, I've got access to all the panel data, but I have no idea what other subcontractors are delivering. So it makes the whole industry less collaborative. And so another example, what we see that is currently being done is, okay, we have the off-the-shelf solutions, the likes of BIMtrack, they're all doing amazing things, Dalux, ProjectWise, and so on. Not to criticize any of those products, because 3D Repo is one of them as well. I'm sorry for the logo that's the font that is not properly embedded. But so what we notice is that these products are somehow sometimes a bit rigid in the fact that they don't offer the custom fields that the custom experience that users are looking for. At the other end of the spectrum, we see you know, products like iTwin, Autodesk Forge that use low-level APIs, but it's really hard to create interesting products because they require some kind of level of development, and some companies just don't have the resources, you know, like we're not all dealing with the Arabs and the WSPs. So the challenge is really finding that in between and make that accessible. Maybe modular, not too modular, but really like there's somehow a solution in the low effort custom. So 3D Repo found a middle ground here to record data in the backend while still acknowledging the project-based nature of construction and being aware that some clients aren't afforded the luxury of a centrally owned software portfolio. So this creates a great case for integration. By integration, I don't mean necessarily with other platforms and other products, but an integration of data, of the data itself. And so we can start to expand our use cases to a wider circle of user base and get more people on board. So the opportunities are many. So we can use the existing 3D Repo structure. We call them AEC containers of information. So because we break down the file structure, so this means that now we can just have as much graphical data and non-graphical data as we want. And we can keep on adding and iterating. So the last thing that you want to do when you're bringing data to the model, you don't want to re-author that data. It takes a long time to just, you know, bring that back onto Revit and then just make the changes. You're wasting your time, you're wasting resources and storage. So why do we want to do this? We want to make it as simple as possible for the end user to pull and push data from 3D Repo. And simply because we are working hard on these 3D models. So we want to give more people access, and really we want to have them start using it for something more than representation and coordination. So our story is the story of flying through the model to communicate ideas and information anywhere and anytime. So the 3D Repo API allows access and integration with the wealth of data stored in the servers. So, you know, a 3D model we found is a great anchor for data in the construction industry. And so they enable more effective interactions across stakeholders and empower teams to tailor workflows. And we want to cater for that tailored workflow. And so where do we go from here? 3D Repo created that new API. It's an all-in-one solution to unify basically data management. So the goal here is to increase the quality of 3D models on projects, enrich design data to make it fit for purpose, enable 3D models to assist in decision-making, presenting and discovering the data, and allowing users to customize their 3D model and streamline data linking across BIM workflows. So it looks like something like what you're seeing on the right. Basically injecting and linking that data without ever having to write it in the authoring tool. And this allows us to solve many problems. And then last but not least, empower client teams to build powerful solutions. So for those of you who are a little bit more tech savvy, we've got our full documentation on GitHub. It looks like something like this, where you can attach data to an element of a 3D model. You can easily retrieve and update data from elements, and you can remove the need for updating the 3D model. Remember, AEC professionals aren't necessarily developers, so we want to make this scalable and independent as well. So very important, it should be technology agnostic. So again, the solution here is we see the APIs as those wires that are hanging out at the back of the platform. And in practice, here's how it looks like. So in this case, the API allows users to use the facade panel data import modularly and independently. So if I'm at the factory or if I'm on site and I want to get all that information from the facade panel, all I need to do is execute that API. So I can import, add, or even remove that kind of data back onto the model. So from delivery date to embodied carbon to work package, arrival on time, QA sign-off, anything really. And so if we get to this exciting part, you can tap into all the data in the world, right? And you can talk about multiple implementations via industry use cases. Think of it as this gallery, you know, a manual for commercial consumption. So what if I want to look at embodied carbon tracking? What if I'm looking at custom 4D sequences? This data initially did not, you know, exist in the BIM model. It wasn't part of the BIM execution plan. It wasn't part of the mandate anywhere. But it gives a lot of like decision and transparency and overview to those who are working on those models. So from here, the applications are endless. But I've compiled 3 main use cases, and I'm going to talk about the last one more thoroughly. Remember, you're trying to make everyone's life easier. So you got to ask yourself this question: what am I trying to do? Okay, APIs are great, technology is great. Am I trying to look at simulation data? Do I want to look at visualizing embodied carbon? Am I doing some design optioneering, looking at material analysis, and that's at the design stage? Am I looking at the construction stage where I want to leverage my logistics planning and progress monitoring data? So am I looking at look-ahead supply chain strategy? Do I want to bring in the production, installation, and off-site manufacturing information onto the model because I want to recycle those models and I want to really use them? Or I want to link the maintenance data at the operational stage, and I'll talk about this a little bit more. So from here, you know, you have fit out and occupancy, sensor devices. You want to do some QA and compliance checks, not the Kobe checks, you know, not the checks for your BIM model, but you want to just expand that. And so just without really like spending too much time on this, we've had a webinar a few months ago, so you can check it out on YouTube. Carbon visualization, very hot topic at the moment, especially at the design stage. And just another quick overview of a data-driven approach to model storage. So here we're seeing the 3D Repo model inside Power BI with embodied carbon data imported from a third-party library and applied to the model elements. So you can navigate the model, interact with the charts, and add model filters. By integrating here, the 3D model and the data source are free to be updated independently, with the end result being a simple and easy to understand dashboard, which can be distributed. So whether you're adding life cycle assessment factors, other metrics, or just modifying the energy consumption scenarios, that custom metadata API will allow you to just do those design optioneering. Second case is the facade fabrication progress. So we're all talking about 4D sequences. A lot of people hate Synchro, very difficult software to use. We're not saying completely get rid of Synchro. We're just saying, actually, that factory has some 4D data. They have the last inspection date, the delivery management system, when was it delivered, was it installed, was it not? So, and that data is not always in a 3D model. You might inherit some 2D spreadsheets or 2D drawing. So it just doesn't help because it doesn't scale. When you have thousands and thousands of panels and products, it makes it very hard to track. So what we've done here is you might inherit a list of 100 IDs, but we want to link that factory information and that factory data back to the 3D model. And we want to visualize this so we can start to apply rule sets for model validation. And we can really see and track whether that component has failed or passed the QA checks. And so we really empower the user to create those rule-based groups. So I'm going to show you as well. And that's our last example for today. So this is just a quick overview of, in the third case of facilities management and maintenance. I'm just going to play the video. Oops. Doesn't seem to be working. Okay, that's fine. I'm just going to talk about it and... thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So yes, that last example draws upon a case in the post-construction and operational phase. Basically, I want to leverage my maintenance data by alerting FMs of potential problems. So what you're seeing here is the geometry of rooms in 3D. And I want to do manual checks, and I want to just automate that whole, checking process, because it's actually a very hard job. These are very high-risk roles. That person who's doing those checks, they're the ones that we're really relying on them, and there's a lot of pressure, and it's a very hard and manual task to do. So if that FM is going to do all the checks, it's very expensive, and it will only include just a snapshot of what they're supposed to check, basically. So we want to push for the continuous real-time data that is more valuable and cost-effective. So what you're seeing here, we're looking at that BIM card that shows you all that metadata that we brought. And what we achieve here is a consolidation of data coming in from different places. That allows for an archiving of the whole project in a future-proof way, but at the same time, for more operational cases like digital twin solutions, for example, you could link, let's say, your smart sensor data. There's a QR code or a link for you to just check that. And you can visualize this by literally just filtering that information and just color coding the model to the rule that you want to check, whether it's the fit out or if it's the room department, the temperature, or something related to thermal comfort, and so on. So on top of those QA checks, I could even tap into fit out and different kind of information. And so by attaching that data to the 3D model in 3D Repo, we're saving the hassle of having to reauthor everything. So we're saving time and resources. And then I think I can conclude it just here. Just a recap, so we looked at how we can promote and upsell the 3D model with stream data, how we can access critical construction information that did not exist in previous BIM workflows. Obviously, with that, we've improved safety, accountability, and compliance. And then it's an evidence-based decision-making tool on the go. And we're mostly technology agnostic practice. So we're accepting any file, any of the file formats that we support. And that's it for today. Thank you.